It is the month of February, or the month of love if you prefer that. Or for me, being the lovely bachelor that I am, it is a month to truly show my inner degenerate. Although is it really inner at this point? Yes, this month we're gonna be focusing a lot more on one of my favorite genres of all time, and probably overall my favorite genre of anime. Because, you know, stuff like action and shonen, it's a given. But for me, this is the genre that finds just some of the most diamond in the roughs. Some of the stories that have hit me the hardest, either expectedly or very unexpectedly. So I figured I would talk about one that I haven't watched recently for the first time, but I figured it's about time I dedicate a proper review to it. That being the immensely popular romance, light novel, anime in all of its glory, Toradora. Now, normally my reviews for anime are stuff that I've recently watched for the first time, but no. Toradora I watched for the first time years ago, man. It was like during that first wave of when I stopped being like, you know what, maybe Dragon Ball isn't the only anime in existence. I branched out and started watching stuff. At first it was very questionable stuff, but every once in a while I found stuff like this. Toradora. I've revisited a little bit, one just obviously in anticipation for this video, but just cause back when I first watched it, I definitely didn't give it the justice it deserved, or probably even enjoyed it as much as I would have today. Just cause back then I would have been like, what the hell is this? An actual plot and characters that are well written, and it's not just a bazooka booba fest half the time? What the hell is this? Granted, I still watched all of it. I mean, one of the biggest regrets is that looking back on all those shows, it's like back then I only ever watched them in English, and I did watch this in English. Granted, the English dub of Toradora is pretty good. I mean, it might not be, I don't know, I haven't revisited it in at least like 6 years. When I revisited it recently, it was through the Japanese, which, yeah, fucking phenomenal voice acting. Either way, I guess we'll delve into what Toradora is for those who maybe are not familiar. Originally, Toradora was a light novel, which was released back in 2006. God, why was everything released back in 2006? And then eventually there was a manga that was made for it in 2007, and then finally an anime, which started in 2008. Damn, so it was 2006 was the light novel, manga was 2007, 2008 was the anime. Damn, why can't we be like that anymore? I get it, it's because there's such an influx of anime right now. In terms of the plot for Toradora, it follows Ryuji, who is going into his second year of high school, and despite him being a sort of just gentle spirit, he has like these eyes and a face that gives off an intimidating aura to the average person. He has his good friend Kitamura, as well as a girl he has a crush on named Minori. And then eventually he accidentally bumps into the most dangerous animal in their whole school, Taiga Aisaka, and they get into a little scuffle, literally. Stuff happens, and then eventually it's revealed that both Taiga and Ryuji are literal neighbors. Their apartments are right next to each other. And then they talk about stuff, and then it's revealed that they have crushes on each other's best friends. And so during the first bits of Toradora, pretty much the entirety up to like the very end, it's them helping each other, trying to get together with their crushes. So as the plot goes forward, it's revealed that maybe they have feelings more for each other than their respective crushes. And that's the best I can delve into in terms of an overall plot synopsis without really getting into spoilers. Now, first of all, this show is amazingly animated by Studio JC Staff, who has done stuff such as The Familiar of Zero, A Certain Magical Index, Aria the Scarlet, Golden Time, Food Wars, Shimonetta, Prison School, Psyche K, and a plethora of an endless amount of stuff that they still are doing to this day. I think that needs oiled. And just more on the production side of things. One of the biggest praises I have for this is the writing, both in just the dialogue and how the characters interact with each other. Overall, it's a fairly simple story. It's romance, but it's such like a spiraling romance. It's a weird way to describe it. There's been many shows who have tried to replicate the kind of story the Toradora is, but I think very few have succeeded. I mean, it's not really something you can replicate and have it feel unique. I mean, from the get-go, you can sort of figure out where that's ultimately going to go is, oh, they initially have crushes on these two people, but, you know, it's eventually a crush that will then switch and they go to each other instead. It was just so weird going through it again. One is just, I kind of forgot how long Toradora actually is. It's 25 episodes. I mean, obviously comparatively to a lot of stuff I've covered and done, it's not that long, but when you're in the thick of it, again, it's been many years since I revisited, so it's like, I remember the like key points, but like so much of the stuff in between, a lot of like the character building loving moments I kind of forgot about. But of course, on the characters, obviously the biggest meme when it comes to anime stuff is, you know, the whole tsundere simp thing. And a lot of that definitely did start with Taiga Aisaka. Still the most iconic tsundere. Although, it was interesting re-watching it again, because since obviously watching this, I've been exposed to a lot of other tsunderes in different sort of anime medias, but there's just like a right mixture with what Taiga is in this story. She's the palm-top tiger, obviously her name literally being Taiga. And also, fun fact, if you didn't know, the reason it's called Toradora, because of the different, like, you know, spellings and the homophonics of Japanese lettering, you know, Taiga, tiger. The final A is lengthened in, like, the English version, which is similar to a word which is Tora with Ryuji, you know, Ryu is dragon, or, you know, from English to Japanese, Doragon, Dora, Tora, Dora, tiger, dragon, Taiga, Ryuji. I mean, aside from our two main characters, we of course have the other characters. Of course, Minori, who is, you know, Ryuji's crush, who is sort of just like the comedy relief. I mean, both her and Kitamura, the male and female comedy relief duo. Kitamura is voiced by Johnny Young Bosch in the English dub, didn't know that. And then of course there's Ami, who's sort of like the other point in like the romance pentagon that we have going on here. Or as Taiga consistently calls her in the show, the dumb chihuahua. Their back and forth are always really funny, just how they yell at each other. And then of course there's Inko, who's Ryuji's parakeet, which is such a funny character, I guess. I mean, you can't really call it a character, but, you know, there's of course Yasuko, who is Ryuji's mother, who plays an important role in especially like the ending of the show, and so many like other side characters. Now I want to delve more into sort of spoiler stuff, mainly like the ending, obviously. So if you have not yet watched Toradora, I mean, if you're at all into anime, that's kind of a long time coming, if you ask me. Now again, this is something I need to address more in my videos, is just I understand that I'm watching a lot of these shows that have come out a long time ago, or less recently than like the last 5 to 10 years, because I know there's a lot of talks with those kind of shows, just like, if this show came out today, would it be as good? With me, it's different. You know, I just really love the anime genre, and when it comes to just starting new shows and stories, I'm always just open to anything, whether it be something older or newer. I love it. I get that's different for some people. So I can understand that it's kind of harder for me to recommend some of these shows that have, you know, come out longer ago. I mean, this show's only coming up on 16 years old, which I think is roughly how old I was when I first watched it. But either way, we're gonna delve into spoilers now. Again, we're mainly gonna talk about the ending here. The biggest thing revisiting this story after so long is the ending, and how it could be seen as kind of like a rushed out of nowhere ending, but at the same time, it's a beautiful ending. And it's an ending that fits the tone and progression of the overall story, where ultimately it's a thing where Taiga and Ryuji, they finally confess to each other. The weirdest thing is how that scene ultimately plays out is not how I remember it. Like, I remember like rewatching it kind of being like, this is kind of fucked up, and how it's like, it's Kitamura, it's Minori, Ami, like all of them corner Taiga like a rabid animal, which I guess is kind of poetic, corner her in this classroom and finally force her to reveal her true feelings towards Ryuji. Of course, watching it for the first time, I was like, oh wow, this is crazy, but like rewatching it now, it was like, that's kind of a fucked up way to do it. I mean, I get like when you look back on like the story as a whole, like Taiga always needed that push, though in this case it was much more of a push and sort of just a full-on just body shove. I don't fault it for that. It just shows how well and how integral all of these characters are in this story. But then it finally comes to a point, it's like they're about to talk, and then Taiga's mother shows up, and then they both decide to just run away. This show is so weird to try to talk about. I mean, just because, again, I normally do my reviews where it's like I watch the show and either the next day or so I cover it just because it's fresh in my memory. But again, one, it's been damn near probably like 6 or 7 years since I watched this for the first time, and then sort of revisited it recently, and even then when I last revisited, it's been like a couple weeks since then. It's just the ending of it's like they both run away to Ryuji's grandparents' house, and then they stay there for a while, and then they decide to come back, and then Taiga ultimately leaves Ryuji. I mean, not leaves him, but like, you know, he goes and faces his mom, and then she decides, I'm gonna go and face my mom, and then they split off. And then like it's a poetic thing at the end where it's like she sends that picture of the star to like her whole class, and honestly it just shows how integral all of her and Ryuji's classmates soulmates were, well, not necessarily integral, but it's like they meant something to them. They all played a piece in their story in some manner or another. That like ending scene, of course, he goes to the locker, which comes out, says I love you, and then headbutts him, and then the story ends. And I'm not familiar with the manga, though I'm pretty sure they end differently. I don't know if it was a case of where the show caught up to where the manga is, and they kind of had to just end it in some way, which was a classic case back then. But even so, this was one of the few cases where I think where it ended was perfect for the story it was telling. I need to read the manga at some point, because from what I was looking up here, I think there's, like, it might go a little farther past where it leaves. I'm not too sure. I mean, there's also the light novel, which most definitely probably has a different ending and a lot more that happens after. But either way, what would I give Toradora in terms of a score? I mean, what do I have it on my anime list as? I have Toradora as an 8 out of 10. Interesting. I don't know if I would keep it that low, honestly. I feel like that's a little harsh. I think it's safe to keep it at a 9 out of 10, especially revisiting it. It is an interesting show to revisit now all these years later after watching and reading like all these different like romance stories and shows. Sort of seeing how it's kind of inspired a lot of shows even to this day in one form or another, especially with, you know, certain tsundere tropes. Those certain shows where it's like two characters who have different goals or are going after two different people but ultimately find their way back to each other. Overall, it's just an adorable story. And if you're at all into the romance genre or even just into anime in general, you'll find enjoyment in it. I mean, at this point, who hasn't watched it or read it? I mean, you'd never know, I guess. I feel like I didn't talk that much about this. Because, I mean, the story is pretty straightforward. I know it has, like, some, like, kind of deeper meanings in it, but at the same time, it's romance, so it doesn't really. It's more just people projecting it. I mean, there's just so many, like, symbolic things with, obviously, it's, you know, like, Ryuji, who's very soft and kind, but, like, his external demeanor makes it seem like he's so, like, he's intimidating or a jerk, and he's just so tall. And then Taiga, who's so small and seems so like sweet and gentle, but is actually just like this ravenous beast, a tiger. You know, it's a great contrast between the two of them. Also, the opening for this show, consistent banger. Yeah, either way. This was just my review for Toradora. A review, much like many others, that is a long time coming, but you know, it's one of those ones that I watched long before I ever even considered doing YouTube. And I figured I would come back and review it, especially now going into this month of February where I'm going to be focusing more on romance, anime, and even manga as we go into this month of love and Valentine's Day especially. Either way, hope you enjoyed this little review of Toradora. Join me for many other videos of this sort, be they future reviews, reactions, gameplay, and everything else that'll be coming out soon. So until next time, I'm Lancer. Thanks for watching.